And we're back.
Welcome back, everybody, to the only podcast on the entirety of the internet that has now been running for 20 successive episodes that also happen to star me, Dr. Patrick Armshaw.
And I'm Dr. Christopher Silverstein, and we are doctors.
But not doctors.
Yeah, that's right. So here we are, yet another week or week-ish, of interesting geopolitical happenings. And
Indeed,
I've been out of town, but I've come back into town the past few days. So because Europe goes on vacation or holiday in August, and so
that's it. And because we are filthy Americans, we went on our vacations in July.
That's right.
So, yeah,
for freedom.
Yeah, exactly. But also, we're European enough that we actually took a vacation. So which is not a thing most Americans get to do. Really?
No, and we'll take a few more, than just, I went out on Friday and came back on Saturday because I needed to do work on Sunday. Anyways, I shouldn't mock our U.S. brethren. They're going through so much now.
They're having it a bit rough these days. I think there's some news about the economy, Chris.
Yeah, that's right.
Might be troubling our American compatriots at the moment.
Yeah. So we shouldn't mock them too hard because even fewer of them are finding jobs than was expected.
The job numbers just came out, didn't they?
Job numbers just came out. Yeah, like how many jobs are created? Aren't these called non-farm jobs or something?
Yes. The government does collect as part of its, basic job of collecting statistics about the economy, so we know what's happening. Exactly. Yeah. They do collect information on non-farm payrolls.
Non-farm payrolls, that's it.
Yeah. And some of you in the audience may be wondering, well, why are we specifying the non-farm bit, basically? And a lot of it has to do with sort of how, basically, if you want to think about the economy as a whole, right, and you're sort of seeing, okay, well, are things doing well? Are things doing poorly? On the one hand, if you're looking at, jobs in, say, marketing, you're looking at jobs at, gas stations, you're looking at jobs in finance. These are things that are much more going to be affected by the ups and downs of the market, right? Because firms will hire when times are good, they'll fire when times are bad. And so if you want to get a sense of how things are going, you want to look at what's going on with jobs. Whereas farms, people got to eat. People always got to eat. So you're not, you wouldn't expect the same sort of underlying things to be impacting that, right? So what's going to really cut down on farm employment is, stuff like whether it's stuff that's not really necessarily connected to the larger economy.
Yeah, that's right. So routinely, the U.S. government does basically figure out how many people are working, and then they make a projection of people, or then the market makes a projection of how many jobs should be created within that time. And this happens constantly, and it is a sign of how well the economy is doing or isn't doing, and it's also a sign of the practices that are being implemented by the administration. Now, I've always been a person that says that the president and the administration have a limited amount that they could do with their with their powers to affect the economy. But that's in a normal situation. Most presidents don't implement, swinging tariffs and swinging cuts to huge parts of our economy, such as Medicare
and huge
Medicaid.
Tax increases on, the working class and what have you. You're right. Most presidents don't go in for that kind of thing, Chris.
Which makes it easier for people to say, okay, well, the president, they may do this, they may tweak here and there, but it's really the Fed, and it's really just the economy, and it's really, taxes or something, but never all these things at once.
Well, that's the thing. Being able to parse out the actions of an individual administration on the economy versus everything else that impacts the economy. Weather does impact it to a certain degree. Animal spirits, if you're into the whole economic theory business, business cycles, the larger global economy, pandemics, etc. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
So it's hard to be able to say that, the reason the economy is crap is because of this action that the government took normally.
So why are we talking about this? There's two reasons we're talking about this is because the jobs report came out yesterday. We are recording this on the 2nd of August, 2025. And when the jobs report came out, they said that the economy added 73,000 jobs in July. Now, that's a lot of jobs. That's 73,000 jobs that weren't there before.
That's true. That's true fact. But remind me, Chris, how big is the United States population?
300 and something million.
Yes, that's right. And it's like 200 million of them are expected to be employed at any time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 73,000, that's a large number. The number of people who are employed is a large number. Maybe we need a better sense of what this number has been looking like, right? Like for example, let's say during the last year, right?
Sure.
How did hiring end up going? Basically, what was it like? And the funny thing is, if you start looking at the actual data on this, what you'll see is that under the last 6 months of Joe Biden, you had quite a bit of a swing. There were some months where you had like say 40,000 being added in a month. You had some months where it was 300,000. So you can get a really big shift there. But it seems like the average is around like 150,000 jobs
on average.
On average. So 73,000 is a lot less than that, actually.
It's a lot less than that. And here's the issue. Here's the issue. It turns out that the economists, so when people know that the jobs report is coming out, economists basically start doing their own predictions based off of their information and also their knowledge and expertise. And they say, this is where we think that the jobs should be in order for us to be in a good place. So if we get, in July, we should be expecting X number of jobs. And if you're above that, then everybody's like, wow, what a good job the economy is doing. And they'll probably put some praise in the president or the administration. And if they're underneath that, well, then the opposite happens. So in July, the economists thought that there would be 104,000 new jobs created.
That was the expectation.
That was the expectation, and instead, 73,000 jobs are created. So that's a pretty big miss.
Yeah, it's not great. That's missing by a fourth, more than actually. So that's it's a bit of a. Also, it should be mentioned that every month there's a certain amount of like uncertainty because, they're making estimates. They're calling businesses around the country and saying, have you hired? How many people? Not every business gets back to them. Not every business picks up the phone. Sometimes it could take 2 to 3 months to get a full picture of how things went, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm bringing this up, Chris, you see, is that not only did they put out the 73,000 number for July, but they also updated their numbers for June and for May. And those 2 months combined, Chris, you see, were 30,000 in total, 30,000 jobs for both of those months. For both of those months together, it turns out. So yeah, so that means that for the last 3 months, ever since Liberation Day, the American economy has been adding an average of 33,000 jobs per month.
Apparently, there was a bigger surprise, and I'm reading this off of Yahoo Finance.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if you've seen this, but they made further revisions to the May and June figures, which basically erased 258,000 jobs from the what they thought they were getting.
Yeah. So before 2 days ago, everyone thought that, okay, well, we've been adding about 100,000 jobs, a little bit more per month, right? Which, is kind of what was going on with Biden. So it would all make sense if things were just ticking along as they normally were, right?
Yeah.
Except it turns out that, things really took a turn around April, it seems.
Around April.
Yeah. So the first month after Liberation Day, all of a sudden, people stopped hiring as much.
That's weird.
I know. Did anything happen around Liberation Day that might have impacted businesses' willingness and ability to hire people?
Gee, I don't know. Could it be the wild and completely nonsense application of tariffs around the world?
Come to think of it, I think that might have had an impact, Chris.
Yeah.
Now that you bring it up. Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. So so that's interesting. So that's where we are. That's where we are now. So basically, the second part of this conversation about this tariff report is much more concerning. Sure, not as many jobs are created in July than there were before, and we're losing even more jobs via revision. But the Trump administration, the MAGA folks, they have a solution to this problem. They have figured out a way to fix the numbers here. Patrick,
good.
What is their plan?
Is their plan to immediately scrap the idea of using, arbitrary tariffs set by an increasingly aging and, going out of his mind president, and instead to go forward with sober, carefully considered, carefully negotiated free trade arrangements around the world?
That's a big miss, buddy. That's a big miss.
Boo.
Oh, right. Boo.
Is it to borrow a ton of money and give it to incredibly wealthy billionaires? Or is that just did it just doing that? That's not actually about fixing the problem.
That's just the normal plan. I don't think that's anything new.
Okay, all right.
But well, that doesn't count as you're 0 for 2. You need to be better. Yeah. You need to be better.
Yeah. All right. All right. So I give up. I give up. Why don't you tell us, Chris?
Yeah. Fine then. Okay. So in order to solve this problem of getting a bad jobs report, the Trump administration, the MAGA folk, have decided that the best way to solve this problem is by getting rid of the person who wrote the numbers down.
Wait, what?
Let me repeat that again. Mm-hmm. The MAGA administration has fired the person who was in charge of releasing this information because they have claimed her that she has released bad information because she's partisan.
I see. So, okay, that makes perfect sense to me. Because the great thing about this, Chris, right, is that once you fire the person who compiles and releases the information that, the global economy depends upon in order to know what the hell is happening, that businesses need to know so they can figure out what the economy is likely to look like, so they can make investment decisions, so they can do things like hire and what have you. If you get rid of that person because they gave you bad news, then everyone knows that the next person you hire to do that job will never give you bad news again.
Well, that's just it. Now, you fire this person. Patrick, what's this person's name?
Yes. So this is the Commissioner for Labor Statistic, McEnteffer. Yep. Erica Lee McEnteffer.
Thank you.
I don't want to make it sound like she's actually just like a one-name person like Madonna or something like that.
So Erica Lee McEnteffer has been fired by the Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez de Rimmer. Don't really care right now because
not a big fan.
Yeah, and another meme that's been going around is like, this is not normal. So who engages in this kind of action when you get bad information to just fire the people who provided you with that information? Any ideas?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say probably not most modern stable democracies. Like countries that are not like that. North Korea. I'm going to guess North Korea would be pretty big on that kind of thing.
We wouldn't know because how would we know? North Korea doesn't put out information. But we have now people are asking this question on Shitter, X, and I keep an eye on X. I don't tweet. I don't like or repost anything, but I like to see how nasty it gets. And it's a pretty horrible little app.
I'm not here to yuck your yum, Chris.
It's not my yum. I'll tell you that right now. So Erica McEnteffer, is now followed in the footsteps of people like Joseph Stalin, who ordered the execution of census officials in 1937 for showing population decline due to famines and purges.
There is something really ironic, Chris, I'm just going to say, about being unhappy that the census shows, population going down on account of a genocide that you're doing, and your solution is to add to the population going down by killing the person who got the numbers. Like that's committing to the bit is what that is.
Yeah. We're talking about, this happened in China, apparently happened in Greece.
When in Greece?
2011.
2011?
Apparently.
That's very recent.
For accurately reporting the debt figures that triggered austerity.
Oh God! Wait, who was in charge at that time? Was that Syriza or?
Oh, I have no idea who was in charge of Greece at that point. This person's name is Andreas Georgiou, and we have to. We'll take a look at some of this stuff because you never know. And we're talking about apparently this also happened in Turkey. This happened in China. But the point being is that when the leadership is unhappy with the reality and the facts, which that's what MAGA's thing is, they don't like hearing facts. They don't like the truth. They like their version of the truth because it is it is authoritarianism. You just get rid of the truth and make your own. The problem is that it's so publicly happened that you've gotten rid of the chief of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that the next person who comes in, who probably won't be able to add, but they'll have a big giant red MAGA hat on.
Yeah.
That means that now American labor statistics will be completely untrustworthy. So when the next one comes out, then the 500,000 jobs are added. No one's going to believe that.
And that's a big problem for the actual economy, Chris.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you really do, so much of private industry in the United States depends upon the kind of information that is gathered, not for profit, not by private companies, but by the US government, because the federal government is very, very large. It is very, very capable of gathering information. This is one of the things that has made the United States such an incredibly powerful economic engine for over 100 years, is the fact that we've had a government that takes that regardless of which party has been in power up until now, there's been a very strong idea that, well, okay, when it comes to things like the weather, when it comes to things like labor statistics, when it comes to things like the Treasury, you don't mess with these things, whatever the numbers are, those are what the numbers are. And, you spin them.
Sure. Of course.
You try to take credit where you can and dodge blame where you can. But what you don't do is pretend that the numbers are something other than what they are. And to remove the trust that people have in those kind of statistics, where are you going to get that information going forward, right? Because if the government is just going to start saying things like, we have increased the chocolate ration from 2 grams per day to 1.8 grams per day, if they're going to start pulling like 1984 kind of stuff like that, how are you going to figure out, oh, well, it's a good time to invest? So the problem is, if you're a business and you're thinking about investing, growing your business so that you can sell your products to people, you might want to do that if you think, well, employment's going up, more people have jobs, and that means there's more of a market for me to sell to. And if you decide to make that investment, and it turns out that those extra jobs that you were planning on selling to, that extra demand in the marketplace, that was all made up by the government. That was just smoke and mirrors so that Trump feels better about himself. Well, then you're out your money. You're not going to make that investment back, which means you might go out of business. This is something that could have real world economic impacts that I don't think we're going to be very happy with.
No, and my fear here is that if you remember a scene in the Shawshank Redemption when the horrible warden had decided to use slave labor from the inmates to fix roads and stuff.
I do indeed. He gets a pie with money in it.
He gets a pie. That's right. So he gets the pies. And so instead of counting on the publicly available knowledge, you just have to have your backhanders and know who the person is to talk to in the administration. And what do you have to give them? This is how authoritarianism works, so that you have what the government says is the truth, of course, but then of course the actual truth, because the commissar on the side, of course, you have to hand him $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 dollars as as a little treat from the contract that you might get from the government. Or so instead of like reading the information that everybody else has to read, you're going to get this inside information.
So corruption becomes just another cost of doing business.
And I'm actually a believer that corruption, it's going to be everywhere, and corruption does happen. And to assume that there's a world of zero corruption is incredibly naive. But,
sure, but there's clearly some societies where there's some corruption, but it's mostly stable, and there's other societies where corruption is clearly taken over.
Absolutely.
Any move from the first world to the second is not a good move.
No, and that's what's happening here. When you fire this person because you don't like what they said, they haven't done anything wrong, which means now, if I was this person, I'd sue. I don't know how the employment system works when you are an appointee of the president or an appointee of, the Secretary of Labor, but it is.
It's funny you should mention that, Chris, because there is actually quite a large amount of law regarding civil service protections for civil service workers who are not political appointees by the president, right? Because one of the big things in the United States that we did after the assassination of, I believe, James Garfield, let's say it was Garfield, where he, if I have this right, if I'm not thinking of the wrong guy here, but so Garfield's elected. One of the people who's been supporting him is hoping to get a cushy job in the administration. He doesn't get that job because he actually wasn't that important. He goes nuts, assassinates the president for not having been given his cushy job. And America finally decides, you know what, maybe instead of just handing out all the offices of state to like political supporters and rich dudes and nutcases just because they happen to back the president's party, maybe we should have a professional civil service.
Yeah.
That like gets their job because they know what they're doing. You know?
Always.
Maybe we should become a modern state in that sense. So so this is the kind of thing that really does strike at one of the underpinnings of the modern American state.
Well, it's just democracy and, or even just competence. Because when you hand your job to, the guy who has your hat on, do they know how to add? Doesn't matter. When you hand your job to Skip or Big Balls, we haven't mentioned him in a while because Big Balls has quit his job, by the way. He's no longer in Doge or whatever the hell it's called today.
So it turns out the administration no longer has Big Balls.
No, they don't. No Big Balls in the administration. So when you hand these positions out to people who are loyal but have no qualifications, you're just screwing over the country. But you're probably ensuring that you personally, the administration, the leadership, whatever, will be fine. So we've covered this, I think, pretty well. We'll have to keep an eye on what happens and who the next person is, and I'll be stunned if it isn't some jackbooted MAGA freak who who comes from. Who just graduated from college again with no real experience, and they're going to put this person in charge of labor statistics and pay this person an extortionate amount of money that they don't even really deserve to earn.
And can I just close out this last bit with a quote from a really interesting political philosopher of the 20th century, Hannah Arendt. And she very famously wrote a whole book on totalitarianism, how it worked, what it was. And one of the things that she recognized about these regimes was the following quote: "Totalitarianism in power invariably replaces all first-rate talents, regardless of their sympathies, with those crackpots and fools whose lack of intelligence and creativity is still the best guarantee of their loyalty." And I think we already had Pete Hegseth and Big Balls to prove that point, but now we're starting to see that now they're coming for everyone who isn't a red-headed lunatic, basically.
Yeah. So we'll have to keep an eye on it, but pray for the midterms. Next up, just as we were talking about in our last episode, it's been longer than 2 weeks.
Terrible.
It's been longer than 2 weeks.
But that's the great thing about any scandal that happens in the Trump administration, Chris, it really can only last like a week, maybe 2 weeks before something else happens, takes it off the front pages, and we never hear about it again, right?
That's right.
Because just like 2 weeks ago, what were we talking about? We were talking about this Jeffrey Epstein person, right? And it's been 2 weeks. So now what are we talking about, Chris?
Let me check my notes here. Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh my God, it's still here.
Yeah.
He's still here, Chris.
Well, he's not here with us because he's dead.
And may he rot.
But his accomplice is also with us.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
So for those of you who were not listening last week or are new to the show, welcome. We did an entire episode on our last episode about the history and the current situation with this Epstein files, release of files. Oh, there are no files, and how the MAGA base has been gaslit into believing this one thing, but also being told to not believe what you've been told by your own leaders. Now, the Trump administration has been desperately trying to deflect and create all sorts of distractions around the Epstein files to get people to start talking about something else, including accusing President Barack Obama of treason.
Chris, I'm sorry. Okay, I just need a second. Could you explain to me, Chris, why Obama is supposed to have committed treason?
The simplest way I could do it, because I only know it in a very simple way, is that the Obama administration had done an investigation into Russian collusion into the 2016 election
No.
Or no, yeah. Basically, they didn't. I think this is before Trump was.
No, this was an investigation. This was between December and January 2016 to 2017, right? So after the election, before Trump takes office, the Obama administration does they order an investigation into Russian interference in the election. And to be very clear, there was absolutely Russian interference in the election, in the sense that there was criminal activity, hacking of people's private emails, releasing those emails then to politically favored dudes online. In particular, what's your man, the Australian guy with no melanin?
I have no idea. The Australian guy with no melanin.
Yeah, do you remember him? Julian Assange.
Oh, Julian Assange. Yes,
Julian Assange,
former resident of the Ecuadorian embassy here in London.
The pastiest man in all of the United Kingdom, which is impressive, because, and I speak as quite a pasty Irishman myself, and so we got some paste, but that man's got us all beat. So he hasn't even looked at the sun. So there you go. Yeah. But yeah, so like they there was an investigation into this, because quite clearly there was a concerted effort by the Russian state to interfere in the election. Now, that did not, to anyone's knowledge, and certainly there was no evidence of this, there was not any attempt by the Russians to overturn the results of the election by changing votes. Yeah. It'd be very hard to do that anyway, because of the incredibly federalized system that the United States uses for its federal elections. There were attempts, however, to hack into voting sites. There were attempts to hack into the voting infrastructure. Yeah. Fortunately, it appears they were not successful. And there's no evidence whatsoever of changing any votes or what have you. But there was absolutely an attempt to influence the election. Not only did the Obama administration find this, but also later on a congressional inquiry under Trump, led by Republicans, also found that the exact same things had happened. They found evidence that, Russia was attempting to interfere with the election. They were engaged in a widespread governmental-led program of influence. Yeah. Yeah. So that was fun. That was fun. It's nice when everyone comes together and agrees on the thing.
Yeah. So everybody basically agreed that, the Russians are influencing or trying to influence the election and did. Mm-hmm. But then for some reason, Trump decided to just throw some stuff on the wall and say that this investigation, which Patrick has just detailed, actually was a spy operation upon himself. And this is the greatest and biggest story that's ever been, and it's all treason, quote unquote. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you could think of. That's what Trump said. It's time for people to go after him and focus all on him, and don't look at Jeffrey Epstein, but only look at me. Only look at him. Don't look at me. Only look at him.
He did literally manage to fuck it all up, didn't he? By in the middle of saying we should all be focusing on Obama and stop talking about Epstein. He couldn't help himself, Chris. Yeah. He couldn't help himself.
He couldn't keep his mouth shut, or at least pretend that this was a very serious thing. And the problem was that there were two things. No one in the room believed any of what he was saying, because, of course, the president, during the time after this investigation had happened, was also a person named Donald Trump. And and there's another person who was investigating this Russia influence into our elections in the Senate by the name of Marco Rubio, who is the current Secretary of State of the United States of America. So there's all these people who basically decided not to do anything about this massive treason until just now. Yeah. And
because what's amazing to me is that the officer of the Director of National Intelligence, and this is
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes, Tulsi Gabbard. Thank you very much. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard, famed lunatic and big supporter of the Assad dictatorship in Syria. Look it up, kids. She's on the record as being very much in favor of Bashar al-Assad. I don't know how you get there from being a congresswoman from Hawaii, but there you go. But yeah, so she is currently the person who is in charge of she's the Director of National Intelligence. God damn. Anyway, so she says that she found a document that says that there was no evidence that Russia had changed any votes. And that proves that Obama was committing treason by claiming that Russia had had attempted to influence the election. Right. Those of you playing along at home may notice a few minor problems with this claim. Number one, everything that Obama said was true. The document that Tulsi Gabbard came out with is also true. And both of those things are true, and there's no contradiction whatsoever between them. Also, treason is levying war against the United States with guns and bullets, Chris. And that didn't happen at all.
Yeah. He's not Benedict Arnold or some of the other people who've actually levied war against the United States.
Yeah, exactly. Even Aaron Burr didn't get done for treason. And that man literally was building an army to go to war with the United States, but they hadn't fired a shot yet, so it wasn't treason yet.
It was just a well-regulated militia.
Well, there you go. Exactly.
So we have given more time to this than most of the press corps. But the last thing that I want to say before we get to the reason for all of this is that if you remember last year, the Supreme Court decided to grant Trump immunity for most of the things that he does. Now, they say presidential immunity for official acts. Yeah. Now, what people are saying immediately were like, hang on, even if this was true, it was an official act of the president. Therefore, he can't be prosecuted against it at all, ever. And so this story has now fizzled out and gone away. And people have been focusing on a slightly bigger story with two words, not Jeffrey Epstein, but Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ah, yes, the Lady Ghislaine herself.
Yeah. Now, just as a quick reminder of who she is, she was the right-hand woman of the trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. She helped get the girl. She was the procurer of the underage girls.
She is also accused of having engaged in some of the rape herself.
Yes.
And, also got convicted of that. So fun.
Yeah. So she actually went to trial. She actually has been convicted, and she was put into a hole in the ground in the United States somewhere.
20 years she was sentenced to.
20 years in prison. 20 years in prison.
For incredibly serious crimes. Again, against children.
Yeah, of which is that alleged, or is that confirmed?
No. She was convicted of these things. In fact, I'm going to get the conviction list up real quick.
So she, while he does that, so just want to point out, we're trying to make very clear that she wasn't a bystander, and she wasn't just looking at it but not involved. She didn't close her eyes and just pretend like it wasn't happening. She wasn't in the next room. She wasn't in the next house. She wasn't on next door on the island or somewhere else. She was in the room where it happened. That's why she's in jail. Yeah.
She literally committed crimes, and a jury of her peers said, yes, we have no doubt that she committed those crimes.
Yeah.
So
nobody is saying, no, that's already done. So there is no ambiguity. So the reason why she's important. Oh, by the way, do you have that conviction list?
Oh, well, yeah. So what I've got here from Wikipedia, the finest source on the internet, is that 29th of December 2021, she was convicted by a jury in U.S. federal court on 5 sex trafficking-related counts, carrying a potential custodial sentence of up to 65 years imprisonment, 1 of sex trafficking of a minor, 1 of transporting a minor with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, and 3 counts of conspiracy to commit coate felonies.
Coate? What's that?
Coate. Yeah. Coate is the legal term for completed. So inchoate would be attempted. You attempted to do something right. You didn't actually do it, but you were getting ready to do it. You're right in the point of doing it. It's like, well, okay, you tried to kill him, but they lived. So it's an inchoate offense in that sense. Right. Yeah. I don't know. I've never seen coate used as an adjective, though. That's a new one for me.
So that's where we are. And while they were trying to distract us with things like the Obama treason story, there were reports that and they were not reports. The DOJ was very clear. They wanted to get in touch with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, and that's interesting, Chris. And I'm going to put on my lawyer hat for a moment here,
go right ahead,
if I may. So the thing is, right, if you're going to suddenly interview Ghislaine Maxwell for what it is that she knows, because of course the whole point of the Epstein story is that it wasn't just Epstein doing it. The accusations are that his network of friends and powerful people that he knew were also involved in these criminal sexual acts. There were accusations against Alan Dershowitz, against Bill Clinton, against Harvard physicists. This was quite a big deal. But there's never been anybody actually investigated, much less charged out of that, right? So a lot of people think that, well, if you're going to start going after that larger web of conspirators, then you're going to need it in. And so it appears that the Trump administration is putting it out there that they want to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell because she will know who else was involved. She'll be able to point to the other perpetrators, right?
Right.
Yeah, which is weird because shouldn't they have done that when they charged her in the first place?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, they did. They did talk to her then. And they asked her, well, who else do you know? And she said, no one. I'm completely innocent. I know absolutely nothing. She had every opportunity, basically, to turn state's evidence before her trial. And instead, what she did was she lied ridiculously to the court, provably, by the way. The only reason they didn't charge her and convict her of perjury is that having got her on the issue of, sex trafficking of a minor, they decided perjury was just a small thing, basically. But the courts have recognized that she is someone who has no compunction about telling outrageous lies that are provably wrong to the court under oath. She is not trustworthy, Chris.
She is not a trustworthy witness, not a trustworthy person to give testimony. Okay.
So if she's all of a sudden going to come out and start saying, oh, well, yeah, of course, I'll tell you all about who the other people were. Well, there's not a hell of a lot of reason to believe her just on the basics of that, right?
Well, yeah.
But it gets worse.
It gets worse. But it gets worse. No, please tell us how it gets worse.
So, okay. Now, if you are going to interview Ghislaine Maxwell for further information, right? Maybe you get something useful, maybe you don't, maybe you get something you don't trust it, who knows? But this is low-level lawyer shit. You send a low-level lawyer to go and conduct that interview, right? Because after all, if you send someone really high up in the organization, that looks like it's a political hit job. That looks like it's you trying to get a certain story rather than get the truth, right?
That's right, yeah.
And that's really interesting because who are they sending? It's the assistant U.S. Attorney General, a certain Mr. Blanche, which is
the assistant U.S. Attorney General. So the assistant, one or two steps down from Pam
Bondi, Attorney General of the United States. Yeah, so that's
theoretically somebody on the same floor where she works.
Yeah, which implies, well, that's the thing. There's an implication here, which is that either they couldn't get any lower level people to do this because it's,
bonkers.
Weird. It's bonkers and sketchy, Chris. Bonkers and sketchy. Absolutely. So, or they couldn't trust anyone lower level because they really wanted to get their particular story, right? Yeah. So this looks bad, but my story gets even worse, Chris.
Wow.
Because normally when you're going to be interviewing somebody like that, right, as a lawyer, you want a third party there.
Yeah.
And you really want a third party there because if you say, interview that person and they give a bunch of answers and you write them down in your notes and you say, okay, well, we're going to offer you a plea deal in exchange for this information. And if that deal is false, then the deal is off. If the information you gave is false, we rescind the deal. You go back to prison, and then later on they say, oh, well, I never said that. Well, if there's no third party there to prove that that contract was formed in the first place.
Right.
Well, then the only person who could give evidence of what Ghislaine Maxwell said would be Mr. Blanche himself, which means instead of just acting as a lawyer, he's now a witness, which you can't do as a lawyer, which it would make it really weird if he were to meet with her alone, which is literally what he did, Chris.
Right. So the government
entirely alone, just the two of them having a little cozy tete-a-tete, but my story gets worse, Chris.
You keep on finding new levels.
Oh, yeah. And this is the thing. Every lawyer who listens to this is going to their heads are going to explode on this one, Chris. Right. Because not only does the assistant attorney general meet with Ghislaine Maxwell alone in order to offer her a deal, he doesn't take any notes, Chris.
Oh, my God. Even I know. Oh, my God.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's it. That's the fucking thing. If you are a lawyer, your job is to take notes on everything. Because you write it down. And you've worked in Parliament. You know that this is true.
I believe that it's Legal Eagle who says all good lawyers take notes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Legal Eagle is absolutely right about that. DJ Stone, what a guy. Just putting that out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's this looks about as insanely sketchy as it could get. And this leads us to the next layer of hell, Chris, if you're ready to descend one more step with.
Sure. Then we'll talk about it. Sure. But what's the next one?
Come with me, Virgil. So basically, We don't know what it is that she has said. But yesterday, or possibly a few days ago, she was moved from her, prison in Tallahassee, Florida,
Gross.
to what is called a federal prison camp in Texas. And federal prison camp may sound, somewhat sketchy and dangerous and whatnot. But here's the thing about federal prison camps, Chris. They're minimum security prisons. They're the place where you live in your own private room. You got a dorm, and there's no walls or fences. So the lady who committed crimes against children, the only person to have been convicted of the crimes against children committed by Epstein and whoever else he committed those crimes with. The only person to be punished for that is now in what is sometimes called Club Fed.
So she's gone from a high security prison in Tallahassee, Florida, which, as we both know, is surrounded by swamps and gators.
It's surrounded by one of the largest pine barrens of the United States.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah,
not much better from an escaping standpoint. Because let me tell you, man, like during the spring, oh my God, the pollen will choke you to death.
Oh, it does. It does. I mean,
oh my goodness.
If you have to be there during that time, it's unpleasant. And instead, they put her in a place where there's no walls. It's almost like she's trying to get a similar deal to what Epstein got, where she was allowed to hang out for 12 hours a day, with his little tag on, and then come back, when he felt like it, to sleep.
Federal prison camps are based around letting people work outside and, do that kind of thing. So, yeah. And her lawyer has made it clear that she is angling for a pardon. And a pardon. Oh, yeah. And when Donald Trump was asked about, giving Ghislaine Maxwell a pardon for, again, her crimes against children, his response was, I haven't thought about that. I'm allowed to do it.
And this is a person who he also wished well when she was going through the trial.
That's true.
And as a person that they clearly know, like he clearly knows. Now he said, well, she was like a neighbor on my island, friends with her. But, like Epstein and Trump are clearly friends. I mean, the last episode we talked about his, naked lady drawing, like you don't just send that to somebody you don't know, with your weird little poem on the inside, your little screenplay about, we all have secrets, or every day is another delicious secret.
We have certain things in common, Jeffrey.
Enigmas never age.
Again, like, what? I really want to know what that could possibly mean, other than what it obviously freaking means.
It's like the Emperor talking to Darth Vader.
something, dark side.
Jeffrey, come with me to the dark side.
Oh my God! Yeah.
So again, like this isn't going away, and this is what I'm finding very interesting is that they keep on coming up with deflection after deflection after deflection. While on the other hand, everybody's paying attention to everything the DOJ is doing because they, for whatever reason, are still being very at least somewhat transparent about someone's going to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell today, and it's going to be the Assistant Attorney General. He's going to be doing it by himself without taking notes, and here's a final point on this before we move on to the next section. Before we take a break, really. Think about it like this. So you have been about a month. And if you want to push it back to the Elon Musk things, maybe about 2 months now, we've been talking about Jeffrey Epstein, more or less. You at any time could have pulled this card out of your hat. At any time, you could have said, oh, yeah, well, let's just get Ghislaine Maxwell out of jail. Let's get her to give us what the list is, even though she said there is no list, even though she's completely untrustworthy, even though that we've let her languish in jail for years, basically as now seemingly a breaking case of, emergency person. Who's going to believe anything that she says other than the most sycophantic and authoritarian MAGA folk? I don't think anyone's going to pay any attention to what she says. I don't care what she signs. I don't care if she gets on television and says it was only Democrats, and I'm sorry, she's English. It was only Democrats, and everyone else was perfect. Donald Trump was never even in the room, but his aura was keeping me pure. And like she could say anything, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter because we're 2 months into this thing, and now you're getting the most untrustworthy criminal that you can find to I will potentially back you up.
I will absolutely say this: if Donald Trump gives Ghislaine Maxwell a pardon, if he lets her out of prison and she starts talking, and she gives forth the story about how it was all Bill Clinton all along, and absolutely not Donald Trump. I think every rational person will look at that and say, this is effectively a confession that Donald Trump is a pedophile.
Yeah.
Like if he pardons Ghislaine Maxwell in exchange for her to give incredibly untrustworthy testimony on this, right? That is almost proof positive that he is corruptly paying her off in order to exonerate him, which he would not have to do if he was not guilty. Like this is like and this is, I think, one of the reasons why you're seeing some of the, I think it was a Speaker of the House Johnson was, trying to surreptitiously warn the president. Yeah, but like we're not going to pardon Ghislaine, right? Like you'll see even people in the right wing MAGA space who are trying, I think, desperately to send the signal. This is a very bad idea. Do not do this, because the thing is, if the only person who's been convicted of these horrific crimes against children is let out of jail by Donald freaking Trump, then I think that's basically any reasonable person would be within their rights to conclude that that man was absolutely in the room where it happened and when it happened.
That's right. So, I mean, we'll have to wait and see how it goes, but we'll take a little break and we'll be right back. And we are back.
We're back.
So, yeah, that's right. We're back. And so to cap us off today, something that's been interesting that's happening worldwide that isn't about Jeffrey Epstein or the United States, business trade jobs numbers, is that the United Kingdom and Canada and earlier France are all in line to do something that no other G7 nation has done. And that is recognize the State of Palestine.
Wow.
So this is a big moment because obviously the war in Gaza, the assault upon Gaza, is still ongoing and has been ongoing since 2023, since October 2023. Yeah. But the desire to recognize the State of Palestine has been going on for decades longer than that. Oh, yeah. And the missing bit, so 147 countries and out of the 193 in the UN have recognized the State of Palestine, but obviously the United States, Germany, United Kingdom, France, Italy, the countries in the biggest economies in the world, the most influential countries in the world, haven't done so at this time. And which brings us back to a point that we were talking about many months ago, not many months ago, but a few months ago, that something has changed in the global community that has moved them away from kind of the tacit defense of whatever the State of Israel does. Now doing everything they can to push the State of Israel to either get to the table, stop the massive amounts of bombing, and maybe even just reduce it to minor bombing. Who knows? But everybody's trying to push Israel to come to a ceasefire because they still want the hostages released. I don't think every single hostage hasn't been released from the October 7th attack.
That's true. Hamas is still holding several hostages, mostly, I think, dead at this point. Mostly it's the bodies. But I think there are some live hostages left, if I'm not mistaken.
So it's very interesting that here we are, kind of as Europe goes on holiday, as it goes on vacation, and these major, European and global powers, in which we can now include Canada as an American, that's always a surprise. But we can include Canada in that, have said now publicly that, it's time to recognize the State of Israel, the State of Palestine. However, they said they're not doing it today. They're going to do it in September, I believe, at the UN conference, unless something happens. So, what are your thoughts about this using the recognition of the State of Palestine as kind of as a stick to get Israel to stop doing what it's doing?
I mean, I think it's I think a few things are going on here. Number one, it's a real indication of just how incredibly isolated Israel has becoming in the global stage. And this is a big change. Israel has been able to count on a very strong alliance with the United States, a very strong relationship with Germany. In fact, the state of Germany considers the support of the state of Israel to be one of its reasons for being. One of the reasons why Germany exists as a state is to make up for the actions of the Third Reich in the Holocaust. And that has been understood for decades in Germany to mean supporting the state of Israel. And it's very interesting that Friedrich Merz, the chancellor in Germany, is talking about recognizing a Palestinian state. Like that there's any movement like that at all is an indication of just how intolerable at a diplomatic level Israel's actions have been. And I think we danced around what that action is quite a bit. Several months ago, they ceased all imports of food into the Gaza Strip. And that's 2.4 million people who need to eat to live. And they cannot farm because Israel has shoved them off their land into, refugee camps. The farms are not there anymore. They cannot grow their own food. So if they can't import food, there's no food. And the end result has been mass starvation and what looks to be the beginning of a famine. We're looking at something that could, if it's not rectified very quickly, turn into like a sort of a mini Holodomor, just like a mini genocide of 2.4 million people by starving them to death.
Slowly killing them off. And I mean, and 2 years ago or a year ago, people would just say, well, this is all Hamas's fault. And all these countries that are now lining up to recognize the state of Palestine would have said, just release the hostages and everything's going to be fine. But there have been several ceasefires in the interim that are supposed to slow things down, at least cool things off and try to get, some state of normality. But every time there's been a ceasefire, the Israeli government starts firing missiles again into Palestine or into Iran or into Syria, which is interesting for a second reason, because the last couple, or at least the last ceasefire was arranged theoretically by Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's right. And it didn't stick. Didn't stick there, did it?
Well, it's just interesting that it's not taking, right? So it's like that now. I mean, everybody knows that the enormously outsized influence that the United States can have on Israeli policy, specifically about Palestine. I mean, the United States gives billions of dollars to that region individually to countries all the time. Egypt gets a ton of money from the United States. So there's obviously this vested interest in trying to maintain some kind of level action here to keep some kind of peace and
stability in the region. I think is like one of the big watchwords.
Yeah, stability in the region is where people are trying what people are trying to maintain. And Trump, obviously being Trump, he's just kind of burst into the room and just like, well, I'm going to back one side. Let's just clear out all of Gaza. That's going to be fine. And basically, this is my assumption here, by giving the Israelis, Netanyahu specifically, giving Netanyahu this big cover by saying, listen, okay, we're going to be on your side. You're going to be fine. Netanyahu's taken that as, I can do what I want. Oh yeah, and his cabinet or their legislature, people in the legislature are saying the same thing. I mean, they're saying a lot worse. I mean, they're talking about complete elimination of the people of Gaza.
There's been it's pretty regular that you hear members of the government talk about how the goal here is to ethnically cleanse Gaza, to move all the Gazans out, seize the land, and repopulate it with Israelis. Which, to be clear, is a crime against humanity.
But it is ethnic
actions. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's the actions of a fucking fascist state. When Stalin did that to the Tatars in Crimea, that was bad. And no one looks at that and says, "Oh, well, yeah, that was a perfectly reasonable idea. They could totally do it if they want. It's an internal matter." We all recognize in the aftermath of World War II that there are certain things that states cannot do and retain legitimacy, especially not in the democratic world. And this is the kind of thing that I think, number one, it's an indication again of just how far gone the Israeli government under Netanyahu is, and in fact, to the point where there is starting to be some real pushback in Israeli society. There are calls for a general strike. There are academics and cultural leaders who are calling for resistance against this. This isn't every Israeli who is in favor of, genocide and ethnic cleansing. No. But the government very much is.
Well, I mean, but that's part of his problem, because the Netanyahu government is very far right. It's very right wing. It's very it is filled with apparently authoritarians.
They attempted to seize control of the courts recently.
Well, that was about 2 years ago, right before all this started. The Knesset passed a bill that placed the executive above the courts.
Well, not just that. It basically said that the courts no longer had the ability to even do judicial review of executive actions, right?
Well, that's what I mean by above the courts. Like basically, they cannot act. They basically cannot do any wrong, because if they did something wrong, who's going to adjudicate upon that?
Well, that's the thing. And it's the equivalent of an enabling act. And when that law got passed, it was so incredibly controversial that Histadrut, which is the main labor organization, not the Labor Party, but like actual organized labor. This is the overarching labor union or constellation of labor unions, basically called for mass action. And it was until October 7th. This was the story of the Netanyahu government, basically an attempt to effectively do away with any controls on the executive to create an elected dictatorship. And then once you're an elected dictator, well, why do you have to worry about elections, really?
Well, yeah. As we learned with Mehdi Hassan's debating the 20 fascists, but 17 fascists, I'll say. But there's some people. There are people who are obviously against this concept. There are people who believe that recognizing the state of Israel is rewarding terrorism,
or recognizing the state of Palestine.
Sorry, recognizing the state of Palestine. Is rewarding terrorism, and they also note that there is there are steps by a convention from 1933 that a state needs to have before they can be recognized as a state under international law, and these are the debating points. Like, does Palestine have a permanent population? Does it have a defined territory? Does it have an effective government and international relation? Does it have a formal diplomatic processes, embassies, ambassadors, treaties, so on and so forth? There are people who would argue no to a permanent population, but obviously there is a population in Gaza of 2 million or so, or formerly 2 million people, and also in the West Bank there. Which means you can have a Palestinian state that is broken into, just like Pakistan and Bangladesh used to be the same country.
That's right.
So you can have a country that is broken into.
Russia isn't contiguous.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, Kaliningrad is an exclave right above Poland. That's not connected directly, and that does not stop it from being recognized as a state.
Therefore, you have a defined territory. You have a permanent population up there because they've been there all along. They do have now. This is what somebody, Lord Sumption, I believe you should know that name.
Yes,
I was watching him earlier, and he was saying,
name in British law.
Yes, and he was saying you may not like the government of Gaza, for example, but that's going to be Hamas, because since they haven't had an election since 2006.
Because once fascists get elected, they tend not to want to face another election.
Precisely.
It's weird how that happens, people.
Yeah.
Like, don't vote for fascists.
Don't vote for fascists, because they only need to vote for. They only need to vote you to vote for them once. And there are diplomatic processes. Obviously, there are Palestinian ambassadors or envoys all over the world, including here in London. I've met at least one of them in passing. So they definitely do exist. So I think that at this point, like, you have to wonder as well, if states like the UK, France, Canada start recognizing the state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel. That's how you get your two-state solution, right?
I mean, that would be theoretically, that would put a lot of pressure on Israel, because all of a sudden, for example, one of the reasons why the flotillas that keep being sent to provide humanitarian support to Gaza, they keep being intercepted by Israel, because Israel claims, even though these are peaceful ships, no weapons, that are bringing food and aid, Israel is able to claim, well, we occupy Gaza. Gaza is under our jurisdiction in that sense, and therefore you're invading Israeli waters, right? We have a right to control entry to our territorial waters. If you recognize the state of Palestine, well, then that stops being the case, at least from a legal standpoint. It becomes much harder for Israel to argue that it's doing everything above board.
Well, it's a blockade. So, it's a blockade of another country. And like, this is the thing. And I am not across every single little bit of this, obviously. But if Palestine turns into a separate country, right? Mm-hmm. You are no longer defending yourself within yourself. You are now attacking another sovereign nation. It's the difference between bombing a part of Nebraska and bombing the U.S. bombing a part of Nebraska and the U.S. bombing Manitoba, right? Yeah. They're on the same continent, sure, but they are two distinct entities. And there's tons of different things that go into effect when one country invades or attacks another, such as when Russia invades Ukraine, right?
Yeah. And if you recognize the existence of the state of Palestine, that opens up the possibility of taking action to support the population in Palestine, or even to back the governments in Palestine. Yeah, I guess the biggest arguments that you would make that like Palestine does not currently satisfy the necessary conditions to be recognized is that, effectively you have two governments. You've got the government in Gaza, which is run by Hamas. Which is for those of you keeping track at home, sort of a Islamist political party, very much focused around sort of religious identity, whereas the West Bank has been traditionally controlled by the Palestinian Authority, which used to be the authority that was set up by the State of Israel to govern internally the West Bank and Gaza. But however, since I think it was 2006, I think, when Hamas got elected in Gaza and the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, they maintained control of the West Bank. Since then, there hasn't been a single sort of Palestinian Authority, really. There's been the PA in the West Bank. There's been Hamas in Gaza. And I think that's, to be fair, I think that was kind of the idea. The United States and Israel both were quite interested in weirdly backing Hamas for quite some time, because they saw Hamas as a counterweight to the secular nationalist Palestinian Liberation Organization, which was, generally coded as left-wing in the 70s and the 80s and whatnot. So a right-wing fascist religious organization, the Reagan administration was just all about that. And Netanyahu.
That wouldn't be the first time either, given we supported in Afghanistan.
Yup. I don't know. Well, the great game, Chris. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Support somebody? Okay.
Having the split in the governmental functions, basically, I think that's probably one of the biggest problems with recognizing a Palestinian state.
Yeah. Really.
Who runs it then? Yeah. Who are we talking to?
This isn't easy stuff. I mean, this isn't like. I mean. This is a region that has been for more than 70 years, for quite a while, probably for at least a century, has been under turmoil, whether it be from British colonialism or the establishment of the State of Israel, which obviously created some uproar in the region.
I would say that it had an impact.
People noticed when it happened.
It was in all the papers.
It was in all, yes, it was. But then to have, to figure out, and this is what they'd have to do. Who is going to be in charge of the state of Palestine? Because you need to have a Congress or a legislature. You need to have an executive. You need to have a judiciary, and it needs to be legitimate. And this is and I'm not going to put the Democratic and American side on it. There are plenty of countries. As soon as you get kind of east of Turkey, and Turkey, I'm not including Turkey, but you know what I mean. Like once you get east of there, democracies become far and few between until you get to like Korea, Japan, So
and India, I would say
India has elections.
Give the BJP definitely. Time.
As you go further south, you can see, a few more democracies that have sprung up, and you go further south and on the continent of Africa, you see further democracies sprouting up. However, overall, there are a lot of questions to be answered about the creation of the state of Palestine. And obviously, I mean, like, I'm running through them in my head. You need to create more arable land. You need to have airports. You need to have seaports. You need to have a communications network that isn't controlled by the Israeli government. You need to have all this stuff, which is currently provided by the Israeli government, because they're the ones who are shutting them off and then turning them on and shutting them off and turning them on. You need to have an independent source of this stuff. And so, yeah, this isn't a fix all. This is just, to recognize this. Yeah.
It wouldn't even be like the creation of a Palestinian state, but simply recognizing that one already exists, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we should be, to bring it back to what you were saying at the beginning, this should most probably be properly be seen as a stick with which to cajole the state of Israel into, letting some frickin' food in so children stop starving to death, because children are starving to death.
And it's all over the news now. It's no longer just confined to Instagram and Reddit. It's now every night on the news in the UK.
We can see it. Like, what do you do when the state of Israel is currently engaged in crimes and it's leading to pictures in the press that are, they're not that far off from some of the pictures that came out of the camps in Germany, with people skeletally thin, with legs that are basically bone, and it's horrifying. This should not ever have happened in the first place. It is a war crime to engage in collective punishment. It is a war crime to starve a civilian population in order to pressure its government. This is all stuff that, like, when the fascist governments in the 1940s did this to the people that they invaded, everyone knew, well, these are crimes and these are terrible things and these can never happen again. And it is horrific to see that has that prohibition on these kind of war crimes has now fallen, it seems, almost completely into abeyance.
Yeah, and we should also note before we wrap it up that these same states and kind of think including Saudi Arabia and some other Arab states have called on Hamas to basically shut they basically said, okay, you guys need to stop, and that's kind of the balance to this, and that they want a ceasefire. They want, again, this concept of long-term sustainable peace. But more importantly, now apparently Mike Huckabee, for some reason, has been involved in this nonsense. And he said that he went to either the Egypt-Gaza border, or he went to a border, and he said there's millions of food packets coming in every day, and they just need to calm down, and, everything's fine. The problem is, and it's always the same problem, is that Israel still doesn't let international journalists into the region without IDF escort. So it's a Potemkin situation, and it's also worth mentioning that, like, just in terms of the number of calories that are necessary to sustain a population of 2.4 million people, and compare that to the number of calories that, by Israel's own admission, it's letting in to the Gaza Strip. Even now, when they have started to allow food back in, they're allowing in, like, basically 1/4 of the calories necessary to keep that population alive. You cannot, as Netanyahu has been claim that there is no hunger in Gaza, because the math will not math on that. People are not going to be getting their calories outside of food coming into Gaza, because, again, they can't grow food because of the war. Like, there's no, like, unless you think that they're eating each other to get their calories, in which case that's really bad and famine, and, like, not an indication that everything is fine, but rather quite the opposite. Like, it beggars belief that Netanyahu believes that he can gaslight the entire world and claim that there is no hunger in Gaza, when A, we can see it, and B, it's a mathematical necessity. And yet here we are. I don't think that the gaslighting is finally starting to temper off just a bit, because we are now talking about the United Kingdom, Canada, France recognizing. Is Germany doing it?
Well,
I didn't see Germany on the list.
But, like, Germany has been, like, there has been real movement by Meretz in particular, and so let me check on that. Actually, I don't want to be spreading misinformation on the internet.
But the point being, the point being is that you have you're now getting into like the end game for the recognition of the state of Israel, right? Because once that happens, and people can start claiming that or just declare themselves a state, and then you've now invaded a sovereign power or a sovereign state, not a sovereign power, obviously. But but obviously, but something's clearly changed. We'll go back to what I said at the very beginning. Something's clearly changed. This stuff is not just on social media; it's on television. So the movers and the shakers are seeing this, and they can no longer pretend that it's not happening. And it's also affecting, the Democrats in the United States. So people are asking basically, where are you? Where do you get your money from? Why aren't you coming out loudly and, proudly against, like Bernie Sanders? Stop arming Israel. Bernie Sanders is saying that. Stop arming Israel, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, and for the record, I've now done a quick Google search, and here's what I was referring to. The foreign minister of Germany had stated on Friday that Berlin would respond to any unilateral actions by Israel on Palestine by potentially recognizing a Palestinian state. Now, he has since walked that back after Israeli pushback, but it's an indication that if even Germany, which again is one of the strongest supporters of Israel for what should be extremely obvious historical reasons. Like if even their support is starting to show some cracks, this is a real indication of just how incredibly isolated Netanyahu has made the Israeli state.
Yeah, Germany, just for clarity here, they don't let people to like. Let me put it in this very delicate way. If you are pro-Palestinian and you are, if you're pro-Palestinian in Germany, that's very difficult to be.
It's a very difficult position to be.
It's a very difficult position to be because the German police and the German system is absolutely 0%, will take no criticism of the state of Israel. So if they are now saying, and then of course they walk it back quickly, but they've already said it out loud, right? There's clearly a coordinated global like G7 effect here of people like, okay, the wagons are circling and not in your favor. Right. Because we can't have these pictures of emaciated skeletal children, who don't even have enough, liquid in their bodies to cry anymore, So
you can't keep massacring people who come to the aid places that you set up.
Which
with
happens
the Gaza
regularly.
Humanitarian Foundation. It's been like over 1,000 people. In fact, it was over 90 people just like 2 days ago, I think.
Got to get food.
Shot dead for going to get food at a place they were told to get food.
It's just, it's sad that the speed at which things are going, but as I often remind people, as a Black American, people didn't care about segregation. They didn't care about lynchings. They didn't care about what was happening to Black Americans until we were sitting on the countertops and in cafes in the South. And people had pictures and videos and film of, people getting pulled off and beaten to death for the mere wanting of a cup of coffee.
When you could see the violence, when it couldn't be hidden anymore.
And I think we're approaching that point. So that's kind of it. Our intention is for this to be our first episode on Spotify.
A whole new audience to depress.
Whole new audience to depress. So we should probably talk about something nice. Why don't we end with this? Because we're going to go over time, and if you're still listening, that's good.
That's true, right? Yeah. Exactly. This is your bonus track at the end of the CD.
Bonus track. All right. So what are your thoughts? Have you heard about this Sydney Sweeney thing? She's got big jeans.
Wait. Yeah. Okay. Like what the hell, man? Like, okay, so give me the lowdown, because I feel like I've seen references to it online. I haven't investigated it myself. Haven't stared at pictures of Sydney Sweeney in her fabulous jeans. So give me the rundown.
Shortest version of this possible. So Sydney Sweeney is a television star. She's an actor. She is blonde hair. On Euphoria, apparently. I've never seen Euphoria, and that's the truth. And she apparently is she's blonde hair, blue eyed, has all the right proportions for what people would like to see for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman.
She's got large breastises, I think, is the point that you're dancing around there.
That is what I'm dancing around there, Patrick. But American Eagle put out an ad campaign recently that had this. It was a commercial in America, and it just has Sydney Sweeney in what I thought were frankly ill-fitting like jeans, and and it just says something. And it just says Sydney Sweeney has good jeans, but it's spelled jeans as JEANS.
Right, because it's a jeans commercial, right?
So like that's a pun, right?
Right.
But also, they're saying she's got good jeans. Look at her. And now here, and it just triggered this what I consider a ridiculous debate in America, because you have half of America saying, or half the people saying it's a pun, it's a play on words, it's, trying to be, fancy or whatever. And then you have the other half of America saying this is a dog whistle to the far right and to fascists and to white supremacists because they used a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman. And you know what? I'm going to give 25-30% credit to that, because they could have used anyone. They could have used anyone but Sydney Sweeney.
They could have had like a whole marketing campaign with like, different models and whatnot. Didn't it just
Simone
have to be
Biles?
Right, exactly. I mean, and also Simone Biles, massive Olympian, like one of the most like, physically impressive people despite being very tiny.
She's she has to be tiny. And all they named stuff after her. They named moves after, and they banned moves because she was too good at it.
Well, there you go. I mean, like, seriously, like someone just massively died. If you had an ad campaign saying Simone Biles has good genes, there would be not one word of a lie in that statement. Like, no, it wouldn't. Even if you spelled them jeans with a G. Like,
and nobody would bat an eye, but because they used Sydney Sweeney, and I'm sure it's some Don Draper at 25, some ad bro who's getting paid, $300,000 a year, and he's just like, she's hot, so I would just say she's got good genes, and I'm just like, that's funny, let's do that. Now, people, because what are we doing? We're talking about American Eagle jeans, a brand
exactly.
that I've never worn.
Well, I think honestly, like if you look over at advertising over the last like 20 years, I think you see more and more of this, like sort of advertising campaigns that are based almost as much on creating a furor on the internet. Yeah. Where like, it's something that, some ham-fisted attempt to like, get racists on side, but also get the anti-racists riled up. And then you could say, oh, we had no idea. We didn't realize. Like the, freaking fashion houses had, quite a few things, if you remember, like, there was that Lips sweater that was just obviously racist. Like, I can't even remember exactly which house this was, which design house this was that did that basically. But like, and it was so clear at that time that like, well, they're doing this in order to create conversation on the internet. They do it so they can walk it back. That's the point of it. Right. And I would not be surprised if that was absolutely what's going on with the Sydney Sweeney ad. And I wouldn't be surprised if some, 25-year-old Don Draper, was like, A, this is a killer pun, so we're totally running with it. B, it's going to be interpreted by the anti-racist left on the internet as a coded reference to Nazism. So that's going to get them talking. That's awesome for us. C, the Nazis are going to love it, so they'll buy our jeans. So triple win. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they saw that as like the idea,
Yeah, and to be fair, we American Eagle did eventually come out with the response, and they said, quote, Sydney Sweeney has great genes is and always was about the jeans, spelled JEANS. Her jeans, her story will continue to celebrate how everyone wears their AE jeans with confidence, their way. The statement read, great jeans look good on everyone, right? So this is what I feel like rich people do. like people who shop at Whole Foods, but there's like one in California that's like bigger than Whole Foods. All the food's like $900. I'll have to think about this place. I don't know the name off the top of my head. But
is that before or after Trump's tariffs?
Before, and you could just see it in their head, just like, oh yeah, this might cause a riot, but then they'll be talking about our jeans. Yeah. I mean, I don't really buy that American Eagle is this like infiltrated by these white supremacists and eugenicists.
No, I don't think that this is like a coded like thing to get the Hitler boys on side. I do think it's a way to get people talking about them, and in the age of Trump, there's right-wing market out there, so if
There
you
is
can
a
get
right-wing
them on
market out
board
there.
at the same time, so much the better.
So much the better. I mean, but it is. I find it a very interesting summer debate, and I think it's the low enough level debate. Sorry, guys, it is a low enough level debate that so many other people can get involved with. It isn't Gaza. It isn't Israel. It isn't
Right.
It isn't Jeffrey Epstein.
It calls back to a simpler time. When we could all get angry about stupid shit on Twitter.
Yeah, it's like when Pepsi did that ad with that one lady, and she was like protesting, and she's like, Pepsi solves the racial hatred in America.
I would think it was a Kardashian. I remember that. That was I think that was another example of what we're talking about here, but like, just instead of doing racism as the dog whistle, it was cringe. It was like cringe as the thing that was going to get the internet talking.
Yeah, and it did. We were around. Sure did. No, it was definitely in the summer of like 2021 or 20.
Well, the thing was during the BLM protests.
It was during the BLM protests.
Yeah,
and I mean, I'm sure we'll see something about this in SNL in a few weeks. But I think that's it for today for this slightly longer episode. But we got to talk about Sydney Sweeney, so you get to look her up. Because I honestly,
for research purposes only, people.
Research creeping only. But it's I honestly I've never seen Euphoria or anything. Not planning on watching it.
I understand Zendaya is in it. And I like Zendaya.
She is. I think it's about kids taking drugs and having sex. So let me like teenagers all in high school, all in the same age, given what we were talking about before.
Yeah, I feel like that. I don't need to be watching that. I don't need to. It's fine.
That's what
I was a teenager. I had my time. I had my chance.
Yeah, like so, no need for me to watch the teenage shows anymore. I'm not a teenager or near a teenager. I'm done with that part, and that's fine by me. That's fine. So, thanks for listening. Obviously, we'll keep you guys posted. We'll see you next week. And as always, I'm Dr. Armstrong. No.
Damn it.
No. Let's try that
totally
again.
Messed that up. Yeah, let's try it again. All right.
As always, I'm Dr. Silverstein.
I'm Dr. Armshaw.
And we are doctors.
But not doctors.
Good night.